on this episode of Postcards.
I use native clays because it allows me to connect with my place.
I like to come here because of the camaraderie amongst just friends and fellow spoon carvers, sharing techniques and talking about wood and spoon design.
I love working with silver. It's a beautiful metal, and it flows, it's brilliant. It's probably the new gold.
This program on Pioneer Public Television is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. Additional support provided by Mark and Margaret Yakel-Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. ShalomHillFarm.org. The Arrowwood Resort and Conference Center, your ideal choice for Minnesota resorts, offering luxury townhomes, 18 holes of golf, Darling Reflection Spa, Big Splash Water Park, and much more. Alexandria, Minnesota. Explore hundreds of lakes, trails, and attractions for a great vacation or a place to hold an event. ExploreAlex.com. Tri-State Brain and Spine Institute, with locations in Alexandria, Edina, Crookston, and Maple Grove. Doctors dedicated to evaluating and treating all types of brain and spine problems, no matter how complex.
When I first started making work, I was kind of enamored by just the throwing, but then it quickly changed from that to trying to figure out how to make that raw clay into something solid. When I was 16, I built my first working kiln. After high school, I did a short internship at the St. John's Pottery, and then I went on to Utah State specifically to work with the wood kilns that they had there. After 1 year, I decided that I wanted to keep making art. So I spent the summer in South Korea working with my teacher, Oh Hyung-jung, who's a traditional ongi maker. So he makes pieces for pickling and fermentation and in the traditional Korean style. And I came back to Minnesota at the end of that summer and built another kiln and just tried to make a go of it, selling functional work and sculptural work. All of my skill development has come through working in numbers. And pottery is a numbers game. But my problem that I struggle with is that people don't want to use pottery. They generally feel like it's too delicate and it's too unique, so they don't want to break it. They don't want to lose that. Making sculpture for me came out of this desire to make objects that can just sit on a mantle, that don't have any purpose other than to look at. My investigation into sculptural forms has been driven by the limitations of the native clays, the way it takes on water, the rate of drying, the way you can handle it because of its strength or density. I use native clays because it allows me to connect with my place that I live and my community. The effect that I'm looking for and that I'm interested in pursuing, it can only be achieved using wood-fired native clays. So this is a decomposing granite, and this comes from the Montevideo area, and this actually came from a deep well that was dug for the water treatment plant. So this really represents the crown jewel of Minnesota clays. My process begins with the raw clay. I slake it down in water. Once the water is absorbed into the dry material, I can pass it through a screen to remove all of the impurities. And then I have to let the water settle out, and then I will take the slurry and dry it out into a working plastic clay. At that point, I can make a piece, whether I'm working on the wheel or sculpting, and that can take up to 6 months to build up a body of work. The process of preparing for the kiln starts about the same time that I start processing my clay for that next making cycle. So I will start moving wood, splitting wood, making sure that when I'm ready to fire the kiln, all I have to do is light the fire and drink a cup of coffee and enjoy. On a good firing, I'll get about 50% of what I'm firing. I'd like to say it's more than that, but in all honesty, I'd say I keep about half of what I make and what I fire. But I'm always pulling out what doesn't really quite make the cut. And sometimes I just don't like the work, so I just start over. I feel free. I feel like it's the only place that I belong. Clay is a constant opportunity to look at myself. It shows me my impermanence. It humbles me. It allows me to connect with people. For me, it's making pottery is not an end. Firing the kiln isn't an end. It is merely that journey I'm on. It's taken me across the world, and it's brought me here, and who knows where it will take me.
Where we are today, we're at the 2015 Milam Village Art School Spoon Gathering, and this is the 9th year that we've had it. It started in 2007 in the cities down in St. Paul. It was actually held in someone's backyard at that stage. There was only about 15 or 20 people showed up for that. And we used to have an instructor here at the school. His name was Frank Foltz, and he was a spoon carver, and it was his dream to have the first inaugural spoon carving festival. And he held it down the cities, and in the second year they moved it out to Milan, which was 2008, and we've had it here ever since. And the interesting thing about this is that it's the first one of its type in the world. It started here. It's actually spoon carving as a Scandinavian art form, though it's people all over the world carve spoons, but the style that is taught around here is generally the Scandinavian spoon carving. And so that's what you're going to see when you walk around and look at what people are doing. But everybody has their own style. It's not all traditional Scandinavian spoon carving. But Frank Foltz was the founder, and it was kind of his dream to do this, but unfortunately he passed away a week before the 2009 spoon carving. But we attributed this whole success to him. The Milan Village Art School is a folk school, basically, and we teach the folk arts, and this would be considered a kind of a folk art. And this whole area here was Norwegian immigrants, and when the immigrants came from the Scandinavian countries, whether Sweden or Norway, they brought these arts with them. So when they started carving spoons, they carved spoons out of wood because they needed to have eating utensils. They didn't have knives and forks and so forth. And as it developed, it became more of an art form. Now that we've carved spoons, we're getting really good at carving spoons. So let's decorate the handles. Let's do all things like coal rosing. They might paint them in different ways. They'll carve them in different ways. So everyone is a little bit different.
I think what draws people to start with to spoons is that it's not intimidating. They're not trying to carve something that has to look like a face or a figure or a picture. Everybody knows what a spoon looks like. And even if it's humble and not decorated, well, that's what you'd buy at Kmart, so that's not a problem. And they know they can make a nicer job than that. So there's that confidence. And I think more and more as people love homemade in the kitchen and cooking, it just seems to fit. And in our culture today that's so digitized, there's more and more hunger for things that are made with love and care and by hand and out of natural material, like a branch off your tree. And that's just natural that people want to get together because it's quiet. There's not noise, there's no machines, no electricity. And so you can quietly sit together around the fire.
The spoon it represents friendship and family and gathering together. That's why this was called the Spoon Gathering. So it's people coming from everywhere who are either interested in spoons or they collect spoons or they carve spoons, and so it's a gathering of people coming together. So it's a symbol of eating and friendship and family and community. Yeah. Well, it's unique because it was the first one of its type in the world. There's probably about another 4 or 5 in the United States which have sprung up. They're also called spoon gatherings, but they all kind of attribute their gathering to this first one that was here. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, there was one which was started in England called the Spoon Fest, which is the first international spoon carving festival in the world. But they modelled the Spoon Fest on the spoon gathering in Milan. These are carvers who all come together, and it's a weekend for everybody to network and meet up each year and kind of learn from each other.
I'm inspired by Scandinavian spoons, but and I've traveled there. I've studied museum archive collections. And the history of the spoon is a long and complex one, so I do know it. I don't know, it's probably more than we can talk about here, though. I like to come here because of the camaraderie amongst just friends and fellow spoon carvers, sharing techniques and talking about wood and spoon design. I don't get to talk about that kind of thing all the time, so it's nice to come here and hang out with other folks the same.
Around the festival grounds, we would see lots of small groups, little vignettes that way, often in a shady spot. We'd see some with a large stump with an axe hewing from a branch to get down close. Others would be doing very fine work like this. Others would be relaxing and watching. And then there's always the demonstrators.
I started coming here on its third year. I was always interested in spoons and spoon carving and looking for other people to relate to, other people that did and carve spoons. And I was searching the internet and I saw a little something on this event and I came down. I started focusing on wooden spoons because as a woodworker, I was looking for something simple to make with a small amount of tools. And spoons was one of those things that seemed to make sense. I carve spoons to make a living. I'm a professional, and also to turn people on to using the natural green wood, as we call it. So starting with just a raw tree or chunk of a tree, turning that into a utilitarian object. So it's kind of twofold, to make money as a living, but also to expose people to how we can relate to it in a different way, in a useful way.
I'm getting choked up because I'm thinking of the guy that died that started this, so you have to give me a moment to get over that. Wow, you asked it because that's the depth of it. Now I might have to do this 2 or 3 times. We'll see. I think the spirit of this festival is amazingly the continuation of Frank Foltz that founded it. One of the most gentle, giving people I've ever known, and delighted in life. And he loved having people come together quietly. And even though he's gone now, that has continued. And people that they come from, I don't know, 10 or 15 states, never heard of each other. They all just sit quietly, and they're just at instant comfort with each other, doing something they have in common because it's of a similar attitude. It's the community, it's quiet, it's delight, it's craft, it's laughter. And it's the best I could sum it up is it's a continuation of whose Frank life was, and in this community today, it's still there.
I think that they would be experiencing something that they're not going to experience anywhere else, or very limited places in the United States at the moment. There's lots of carving festivals on, but there's nothing like this. It's just very unique, and it's a great atmosphere. We really look after them because we're not very big. We can really spend time and make sure everybody has a really enjoyable time on the weekend.
And I think spoon carving is, it touches on what I mentioned earlier about it's a simple toolkit. You don't need a lot of space, you don't need a big shop, you don't need expensive equipment. You can start with just a simple axe and a few knives. And so it really, and humans work with their hands. I mean, it's part of who we are, how we've evolved. And so people crave working with their hands more than just this or this. And I think, all of those combined, I think is why it's becoming more and more mainstream.
I think I have been silversmithing probably for at least 20 years. And I started, I think it's rather fitting, I started in the Milan Village Art School right here. A man by the name of Tom Johnson taught me my first class, and I take maybe a class a year. And the rest of the time after retirement, 15 years ago, I've probably been doing it more intently. I haven't defined my style yet because I keep finding different venues that are exciting and new to me. But I love working with silver. It's a beautiful metal, and it flows. It's brilliant. It's probably the new gold, as they call it. So that's my metal of choice, and I do all kinds of things with it. I think I began with the Norwegian focus because of my heritage, and this community is very Scandinavian. So I began doing Viking knit, which is a woven silver. In fact, it's made with pure silver, so it weaves nicely, and then it's reduced. The Vikings did this way back in 800 AD, so it's been around for a long time, and that was intriguing to me. From there, I think I advanced to chain making, which you can do anywhere. Involves making jump rings that you put together in many, many different ways and in many different sizes of silver, round, square, triangular wire. And that has probably been one of my most comfortable ones because you can do it anyway. I learned to do casting in Arizona. It's the lost wax process. It's a very involved technique, and unfortunately we can't do that here. It requires a lot of equipment and a whole lot of skill. I like to do things that are organic, and you'll see that in my work. I like to convert nature into something that's permanent, like silver. I like silver because of its qualities, its beauty. But once you start making jewelry, you look at things completely different. You look at how it's made, how it's shaped, and looking at the peel of it. And you can do that I think, the best way in silver. I have a Norwegian heritage, and the art school here is in a Norwegian Scandinavian community. So we began focusing on the folk arts when we began this school. By the way, this building this year is 100 years old, so it's had lots of teaching along the way. The Viking knit is a process that the Vikings did way back in 800 AD, and it's a looping process, and they did wire back then, thin wire and thicker wire, and would loop it. They also used this process to do their clothing and their ropes probably, but they also did jewelry, and some of the tools that they used and that have been excavated are very similar to what I'm using today. This is the Viking knit. It's made by winding and looping over a metal piece. I use an Allen wrench. When it's done, I pull it through a draw plate, and by doing so, it will harden the metal and it will make it conform to the shape of the draw plate. Vikings didn't use wood, they made metal. They had many, many metal techniques that we still have today. One of the pieces that I make that I particularly like in the Norwegian or Scandinavian motif is Thor's hammer. And Thor was the son of the god Odin, and he had a hammer called Molinar. And when he would be angry or upset about something or taking vengeance out, he would crack his hammer, and it would thunder and it would lightning. And the Scandinavians, way back when, all right, Thor's at it again. These are the Thor's hammer. This one actually says Molinar, which is his name. So I also do some Celtic pieces because I think they're kind of closely related in many ways. My journey in silversmithing has been exciting, probably more because of the people that I've had the opportunity to work with and the things I've learned from them. But my purpose probably is to share the love of the metal and also the history behind the pieces that I make, which have meaning for me and hopefully appeal to others.
Have an idea for postcards? Send your story suggestions to postcards@pioneer.org. This program on Pioneer Public Television is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. Additional support provided by Mark and Margaret Yakel-Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. ShalomHillFarm.org. The Arrowwood Resort and Conference Center, your ideal choice for Minnesota resorts, offering luxury townhomes, 18 holes of golf, Darling Reflections Spa, Big Splash Water Park, and much more. Alexandria, Minnesota. Explore hundreds of lakes, trails, and attractions for a great vacation or a place to hold an event. ExploreAlex.com. Tri-State Brain and Spine Institute, with locations in Alexandria, Edina, Crookston, and Maple Grove. Doctors dedicated to evaluating and treating all types of brain and spine problems, no matter how complex.